power centers of Mormonism. In my short presentation, I suggested that faith as resistance is about bucking this Latter-day Saint logic and reclaiming ownership of the narrative of the children that's around the children of Father Lehi. And by extension, defining for themselves the criteria that constitutes the blossoming. In many indigenous circles, the blossoming has been expressed as a political, economic, sociological phenomenon, and it is not limited simply to the spiritual. Precisely this because indigenous ontology sees no distinction between the spiritual, the political, the economic, or the sociological. They are all related. Thus, simply being attentive to their own moral framework and folding Mormonism into that act becomes a threat to the logic, to the Latter-day Saint logic that is at the core of the church today. And so indigenous people and their interactions with Mormonism is obviously complex and complicated. What I have shared here is not to dismiss or diminish the views of those who are not part of the church, but whose lives have been traumatically disrupted in real and significant ways because of the colonizing influence of the church. Yet I wanted to emphasize that there are various ways of resisting, and the church must come to terms that that faith itself among indigenous peoples is an act of resistance to the central Latter-day Saint logic. Thank you.
That was fascinating. Thank you. I really value the insight, the theoretical approach. Quite interesting. My name is Matthew Garrett. I'm excited to come out and visit with you all today. Thank you for having me. I've themed my remarks around a book. In the early 20th century, British journalist activist Ella Winter leaned over to an American author by the name of Thomas Wolfe and rhetorically asked, "Don't you know you can't go home again?" Wolfe used that line to title his famous and posthumously published novel. The narrative narrates the fictitious life of a small-town author who ventures into the glimmering lights of the Big Apple. He wins the praise of strangers. He travels the world from New York to London to Berlin, and he is transformed by the experience. He emerges as a new man, hopeful, but also aware that he can never fully, quote, go back home to your family, back home to your childhood, back home to the old forms and systems of things which once seemed everlasting, but which are changing all the time. This adage, "you can never go home again," captures the complexity of the issue I'd like to address today. That is, the comforting familiarity of the past is gone for two reasons. Part of the discord is that individuals change, but it's important to note that the context also changes. The past is not a static place. It is a network of associations and a culture that evolves on its own accord. I find this understanding of dualistic adaptation over time useful in looking at Navajo youth who in the 1950s and 1960s joined the LDS Church and participated in the Lamanite programs. These people underwent undeniable personal changes. And at the same time, the Navajo Nation transformed. And outside its borders, a larger Indian activist movement erupted and also altered the way many Native people viewed themselves and their communities. As context evolved, Navajo Mormons adapted. And in the end, many felt they could never quite return home again. Still others, defiantly challenging the adage, claimed to fit in when they returned. Today I'd like to suspend the well-tread narrative of white colonization of Indians and instead look to the issue of changing Indians and changing Indian context during the mid to late 20th century.